Welcome back to the Marketing Nomad Show. For those of you who are new, it's your favorite marketer, podcast host, and YouTuber. My name is Prit. Today, I've got a fantastic guest. Bryan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, Prit, I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to be here too. It's going to be an interesting conversation, and my name is Bryan McDonald, as you stated, and I'm a partner at a company called onPurpose Growth. We're a coaching and consulting firm that serves clients who are entrepreneurs who have ambitious yearly or multi-year revenue goals. We help them actually fulfill that ambition. So I've been in sales my whole 20+ year career. Professional career, and prior to graduating college, I was always doing something in the sales arena, so probably longer than 20 years. And I was outside of my first job. I was typically brought into companies to help them grow new revenue. I wasn't given client bases. I was basically given a desk and a phone and saying, "Hey, go make it happen, and call me if you need help." So, through that process, I struggled, I learned, I succeeded, and I began to realize that there are some simple frameworks, simple mindsets, simple strategies that can allow myself as an entrepreneur, salesperson to differentiate and grow sales quickly, while others worked as hard or harder and struggled because they didn't apply some of these simple things. So we've been doing this since about 2013, and it's been fun. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the Marketing Nomad Show, Bryan. I know that this podcast episode is definitely one that my audience has been looking forward to, especially when you say, implementing strategies for your revenue growth. There are certain tactics that you have to implement. Otherwise, you could be putting in the hours, you could be putting in the effort, but it's all about working smart more than, along with the hard work as well. So I really appreciate you coming on this show. And guys, today's episode is going to be a total doozy. So brace yourselves for this amazing episode. So Bryan, before we get into, all of the good stuff, first, let's kind of take a step back and talk about 3 mistakes that you see other entrepreneurs making, or your clients in particular making in their journey.
Yeah, I'll call them out, and then we'll dive into them. One is trying to sell to everyone or as many people as possible, going wide. The second is believing that hard work, working a lot, is the only answer, or the answer, I should say, and that applying the same exact thinking to make the company grow that got somebody to where they're at are 3 things that I see people apply and do a lot, and it causes a lot of anxiety, anger, struggle. So I'm out there trying to help people do away with all that anxiety, struggle, and anger. So can we dive into each one of those, or do you?
Yeah, sure. Let's dive into the first one.
Yeah. So one of the best things I heard in a long time were, when you try to sell to everyone, you sell to no one. There is, for every business, especially entrepreneurs, people who are either selling on their own and delivering on their own, or they're running a small business. You tend, the way the mind works is, we want to kind of sell to as many people as possible. And that the opposite effect happens is you try to get growth trying to sell to wide swatches of people. And that's actually the thing that slows you down. So we really encourage people. And one of the places I start with many clients is getting really, really clear on their ideal client profile, so they know who they're reaching out to, how to message that person. And we slow down to speed up, meaning there's many times where within the first month of working with somebody, we look over their pipeline and we start eliminating people to make progress because they just have a lot of activity and a lot of fluff in their pipeline. And that would lead me to the next thing is that, there's a misconception that busy equals effective. And that's just not true. You said it on the beginning, it's the work smarter, necessarily not harder. I'm a firm believer in that. I'd rather not talk to a prospect that really isn't one, that they may look like a prospect, but they're not. I'd rather not talk to that person. Or I'll give you an example. There's a franchise, I'll say, called Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS. And I work with a lot of the people that they call them EOS implementers that sell that service to businesses. And, with I got an introduction from one EOS implementer to another. Within the first 7 minutes, I understood the guy's problem, understood how he wanted to fix it. He looked like a prospect, but how he wanted to fix his problem was he just wanted to hire a company that would book meetings, put them on his calendar, and then he just took the meetings. And I know I could tell by working with many of these people that that's not what's going to solve his problem, nor is it, people may sell that service, but they're just selling a dream. And I don't know many people that are doing that, if any at all, that don't have someone in-house that's helping them book those calls and everything, like the internal service. There's not many external services that can do it. So, I told the guy, hey, this is how I solve problems. This is kind of how you think you should solve your problem. I don't even think it makes sense for us to continue the conversation. And he's like, yeah, I know, right? So I got off that phone call and I freed up the next 23 minutes of my schedule that I could then take that time and go search for somebody who was a better prospect, or go read a marketing book, go read a sales book, get smarter. I'd rather repurpose my time that way, because I can actually grow and it's meaningful time, rather than trying to convince somebody that really is never going to say yes. Then the next thing and the last thing that kind of combines all this is, using the same thinking that got you to where you're at in your current level in your business is never going to be the same type of thinking that takes you to the next level, right? So the more important thing is not, for me, is to understand what the actual answer is. The more important thing to understand is how to think and develop the new answers for yourself. So understanding, being rooted, I should say, in philosophies, frameworks, things like that allow you to refresh the thinking in a way that helps you create new types of thinking, which then creates you new results.
Wow, that's a lot of insights. And honestly, I'm taking notes, guys, over here. I'm actually taking notes. And I absolutely loved when you said that we need to sometimes slow down to speed up. I think that as an entrepreneur myself, I definitely feel sometimes that I'm emotionally attached to the person on the other end. I don't want to cut them off, but I know that this is not going to help me long term. And it took me a little time in the beginning, because when I first started out, I wanted to offer a multitude of things, because I felt that, I was missing out. I think that fear of missing out on revenue and, your income or lacking in some way, not catering to a particular audience, kind of gets you fearful, especially in the beginning stages of being an entrepreneur. And it took me some time to kind of, get emotionally detached to the services that I offer, my own expectations, and then start eliminating and finally niche down into a specific area that I wanted to focus on. And I think that you are absolutely right, because once you start to niche down and focus in on what's important, I think that it frees up so much time to actually go through the process a lot more efficiently and reach your revenue goals faster. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. So if you guys are listening out there as well, I'm pretty sure that you two should be taking notes, because I am over here, guys. I'm actually doing it. So, we're talking about 3 mistakes, and as a revenue growth coach, I'm pretty sure that you have helped a lot of clients out there. Which one is your favorite and your biggest success story as a revenue growth coach?
Yeah, one of my favorite, and it's not an uncommon situation. I'm going to say that the person was is the big story. I got a client, Larry, who now says, because I've been working with him since 2018, he now says to anybody, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And it's half true, half making fun of himself, because Larry is your stereotypical introvert. He's a CFO. He's an outsourced CFO, and he is just knocking out of the park. He's created the business of his dream, and he gets to create whatever he wants now. So when I met him in October of February of 2018, he was closing about 10% of the proposals he was making on a monthly basis, and making about, I don't know, not making the amount of money equal to what he was used to making in the corporate world. By February I keep getting this wrong. So by October of the same year, so met him in February, by October of the same year, because he's a numbers guy, he's an outsourced CFO, he diligently keeps his numbers. He was closing 70 to 80% of the proposals he was making on a monthly basis. And he did that for almost 16 straight months. I think that 70, 80% kind of fell off around 18 months. It went into COVID, and in June of 2020, a little over a year ago, in the heart of COVID, he topped out his revenue at $72,000 a month. And when people hear that he's closing 70, 80% of his proposals, usually people hear, or they assume, that he was talking to more people, and the opposite is actually true. We refined who his ideal client profile was. We figured out where he could win, how he could differentiate himself and solve a problem in the marketplace where he can win faster versus his competition. And then I helped him, kind of go from one side of the brain to the other, be able to switch back and forth, go from CFO to entrepreneur mode very efficiently. And that's what ultimately had allowed him to have his success. He stopped selling to everybody. He got really clear on his ideal client profile. He got really good on his sales process. And even in February at the end of February, he sent me a newspaper article from, he's here in Chicago, from a newspaper in Chicago, about one of his competition had said, they interviewed his competition. They were talking about all the people struggling because of COVID. His competition actually it was March, because February, his competition said he had $81,000 of revenue in February. At the end of March, the guy was saying he had $4,000 of revenue, and he was closing his doors. And Larry emailed this to me and said, "Hey, Bryan, why am I experiencing something different? I'm skyrocketing. I'm at 50, 60,000 a month going up. Why is this guy going in their direction? And I told him to boil it down to a couple of things. One, he wasn't transactional. He wasn't just a service provider to his clients. He added value and he was an extension of the business. And two, he figured out who his ideal client profile was so well that they saw him as not as a commodity. They saw him as a need for the business, and they pulled him closer in times of stress like COVID. So he, in a market, when you take this type of thinking that I've described in your prior question, and you apply it to an economic environment that we're in, your business just gets stronger because you can wedge yourself in the marketplace and fulfill a need in the current market. And then when the market changes, you can refresh that need and just change it slightly to make yourself even more valuable.
Wow. First off, hats off to Larry over there. I know that you said, he was a stereotypical CFO. And when you said he didn't actually increase the number of people that he was going after, but he actually decreased it, but narrowed it down, niched further. That was quite a surprise for me. And I thought that was fantastic. I also liked the part where you mentioned two key things, and that is knowing where to win and knowing how to differentiate yourself. And also, one other key thing that you mentioned was learning how to switch between a CFO and an entrepreneur. I think that those are two very distinct roles. And I think that, it can be easy, you can easily muddle between the two of them and not focus on one or focus on both, but then get both of them meshed together. So I really liked the fact that you said you have to separate those two roles and, learn how to be an entrepreneur at the right time when it is needed. So I really liked that thought.
Yeah, and especially if you're in some type of expert role, right, where you have expertise in a certain distinction, there's a misconception that the expertise in and of itself will sell you, and it's not true. That'll get you a couple of deals, but what was happening with Larry and other clients I've worked with is they start talking over clients, and your expertise is what actually loses you the deal, because people buy the help that they need. They don't buy the thing that you sell. And you have to be, entrepreneurs start fulfilling the help that people need. The expert sells the thing that they sell, or consultant, or, fill in the blank on that one.
Wow, that was really, really good insight. I liked that you mentioned need a lot of times. And I think that is so important, to realize that we might be the expert in whatever field that we're in. We're good at maybe marketing strategy or revenue growth, but ultimately it boils down to what the other person needs from us. It's not our expertise. We need to take ourselves out of the picture, kind of get that ego out of the way, which can get in the way sometimes, and then start focusing on their needs, what they need from us. And I like that you said, it wasn't a transaction. It was just that he was now an extension of his business. Yep. So I really liked that thought. So as you said, if Larry can do it, then I'm pretty sure everyone can. Yep. And I think that brings me to my next question. If, you said Larry can do it and he was a stereotypical CFO, if Larry could do it, then what do you think is the biggest block for entrepreneurs in, getting what they want these days?
The biggest block is not another business strategy. It's not another business tool. It's not another kind of consultant they can hire. The biggest block is themselves. You, as an entrepreneur, when you commit to change and develop and become the person that you need to be or you want to be, that is the business owner of the 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, 500,000, whatever, the clients that I've worked with that have committed to that fully get to success faster, and their success is greater. They become somebody new, and they develop themselves because I'll explain it this way. All the marketing strategies and all the sales stuff that I talk about works. And that's marketing stuff that you talk about works. That's what I meant to say. What doesn't is people. So it's the difference between, take a random, any single marketing strategy. It sits on its own, and the people that interact with it are the ones that make it work or not. So a super quick story. There's a client of mine who we were talking about a certain strategy and tactic, and she was coming to the coaching groups, and I described it to her. She says, yes, I'm going to do it. And she would go, and she would come back, well, that didn't work. She'd come back, hey, that didn't work. Hey, that didn't work. And other people are using the same strategy. So I had a side conversation with her, and I said, hey, this conversation may go in a place where you're like, why are we going here? If you trust me, just let me go and let's kind of peel the onion and figure this out. And as I talked to her and developed the conversation, we got to a point where I said, because what she was trying to do was negotiate some deals that would double her revenue. And I said to her, I said, at some point, I said, do you think you're worth it do you have the personal worth to increase your revenue in exponential like this? And she's like, Bryan, stop. I don't want to talk anymore. And we had agreed in this conversation. She goes, hey, if we get to a point where I'm uncomfortable or like it's a touchy subject, I'm going to tell you to stop. I said, fine. I respected her. She respected me. So she knew. She's like, hey, there's a self-limiting belief about how I view myself and who I am that's holding me back. In 6 months from that conversation, she doubled her company's revenue, and she attributes the core issue or the core problem we resolved was that to help her get there.
Wow, that is amazing. When I first asked this question, I was going to assume it was some strategy or maybe some actual thing. But the biggest block is ourselves. Like, I think that is one of the fundamental truths. Why some entrepreneurs succeed and why some entrepreneurs don't is not about the marketing strategies that come into play or the audience or external factors. It is a lot to do with themselves, or myself included in that entire scenario.
Me too.
So yes, absolutely. And I think that understanding that truth is so important to push forward that change in how we see ourselves, how we see our business, and also in the long-term success of our business. So I actually really like that thought, and I'm definitely going to keep that in mind. Keep reminding myself that if I feel that there's a block in my business, then maybe there's a block in me that I have to first address before clearing out external factors. So I really like that thought, Bryan.
Yeah, and the question to ask yourself is, when you're in this block or you're hitting this wall, is who do I need to become to make this happen? Because usually that spurns a mindset change, which then just spurns how you think about something, which then spurns the result on how you of what you produce from whatever the actions are.
Okay, those are really, really powerful words. And guys, if you are multitasking right now, I really request you to stop what you're doing. We're gonna ask Bryan to repeat exactly what he said. So pay attention, guys. Stop multitasking. Let's listen to those words again. Bryan?
Yep, so I try to get it as perfect as I did. So when you're running into a block, the question you have to ask yourself is, who do I need to become to break through to this, to make this happen? Because that will help you start thinking differently. That'll start, and when you start thinking differently, you start learning how to take action differently based on what you want. And then that action is what will create the result. It's not going to be, sometimes it's instant, right? Depending on what you're doing. Sometimes it's a process. And that's, it's a core practice that I do for myself, because, you know, like you said, we all are our worst enemy. It's like, when I get my blocks, I take myself through this process and I start seeing the answer. And once you change, it's really hard to come back in a good way.
Wow, that's fantastic, Bryan. Thank you so much for those words. That's definitely something that I will probably write on a sticky note and put it on my wall. You know, who do I have to become to get there? And I think that those are really, I don't know, it's eye-opening in a lot of ways. So just as, like, you know, a side question, we've heard a success story. We know that, you know, there are so many clients that you've helped. And I personally have seen a lot of coaching programs out there that help with revenue growth. So, you know, if that is your biggest block, you know, you being in the way of yourself, then what's missing from these other coaching programs?
I think it's some level of personal growth for people. They, you know, as much as you work on the business, you have to work on the person. Any entrepreneur that has what I would label success, or the level of success that I desire, works as much as or more on themselves than they do on the business. Because it kind of, back to what I was saying before, is when they become that new person, they now interact with the business in a more effective way. Then they produce more effective results, or just produce the result. So one thing that I always, like for instance, one thing I always start out with entrepreneurs who are selling and delivering is I get them to describe to me 3 adjectives of a salesperson. How would you describe a salesperson? And then a couple questions later, I ask them, describe yourself as a salesperson. And invariably, what happens is when they describe other salespeople, they describe 3 negative things. When they describe themselves as a salesperson, 2, maybe 3 are positive. Sometimes there's 1 negative. And I show them that, and this is the personal growth part, is when you have a negative connotation of salespeople, what happens is you don't want to be that person. But invariably, when you get stressed and emotional in a sales situation, you show up as that person. You react as that person. So you have to view salespeople, entrepreneurs in a positive way, so then you can start becoming that, because we literally project into the world what we don't want for some reason.
That is absolutely true. I think that I have had, I think I've spoken about this in countless podcast episodes, and even when I talk about it on my Instagram stories as well, that this entrepreneurial journey is more about you than it is about your business or any other tangible items in your life. This journey is more about you discovering yourself, you showing up as your most authentic self. And I don't know, there's a lot of shadow work that goes on as an entrepreneur, you know, digging parts of you that are ugly and learning how to fix them before you can actually work on your business. And I think that has been, it's more of a self journey for me, especially as an entrepreneur. I can pinpoint and tell you the lessons that I have learned, the mistakes that I've made, the character flaws that I have had to overcome personally to show up the way I do today. And I know that the person that I am today is still a work in progress, and I'm always going to be a work in progress. So I definitely resonate when you say that the most fundamental thing about your entrepreneurial journey is you. That's it. It's bottom line you. And I absolutely like that. And, you know, outside of, you know, this block of us being in the way of ourselves, how do you think you know, entrepreneurs can focus, or, you know, what are different ways that they can look at this to help themselves grow their revenue?
So I think the biggest things that that we see effective is, I'll say it this way: identify problems and work on those, and make sure you are not working on symptoms of the problem. Where humans are notorious for working on the symptom of a problem and not the problem itself. So one way to do that is figuring out what's your biggest bottleneck, and relieving that bottleneck, because that will give you the most amount of growth. There's some great books around this. Elihu Goldratt wrote some books on what's called the theory of constraints. The first book's called The Goal. Second book is called It's Not Luck. Now, the first book talks about manufacturing. Second book talks about a professional services setting. If you're not in manufacturing, you read that first book, understand it's principle based. It's not, it's a business fable. So it's not, he's using he's helping people understand how to identify bottlenecks using a manufacturing example, because it's easy, but applies to any business. And when you identify your largest bottleneck to growth, and what I'm saying is that it's your largest opportunity to resolve something that'll give you growth. I'm not saying that you only have one problem. I'm saying it's your biggest bottleneck. When you work and focus on that, you get the biggest growth. Like for Larry that I was describing, the thing we worked on first was he was getting all these people in his pipeline, but that was killing his capacity. He said, whoa, let's stop. Like you're talking, the reason why you're not closing a lot of people is because you're not really clear on your ideal client profile. That was his biggest bottleneck. So we focused there first. And what happened is, he got more capacity because he stopped working with so many people, and deals started flowing through his pipeline to closing. So learn how to identify your biggest bottleneck. Your biggest bottleneck is a problem, not a symptom. And either remove or reduce the friction at that point, and then that will give you the biggest growth. And if you only just consistently do that, identify bottleneck, resolve it, what's my next bottleneck, you'll get exponential growth.
I really like the idea of finding the bottleneck problem, because when you talked about Larry as an example, and you said, he was closing at 10%, I think that if we were to be working on the problem at hand instead of going through the bottleneck way, I think that our immediate reaction to the problem would be to try to close more people or get more clients in. But actually, the solution was the complete opposite. It was to narrow it down. So
we see that happen a lot is, I'm only closing 10% of the people, so let me throw more deals in there. And the problem exacerbates itself. You actually spend money on marketing or whatever, and you don't get the return. You actually lose money, and then people wonder why it's not working. It's the opposite.
Absolutely. I think that that's such a key point, not reacting to the problem at hand, but digging deeper into finding where the actual problem is, and not the surface level problem. So definitely a good way for entrepreneurs to kind of look at and focus to help them grow their revenue. And, if someone's listening to this podcast and they now know that, yes, okay, in theory, I have to find the bottleneck part of this entire situation. How do they identify it? What are some of the steps that they could take to actually figure it out?
That's a great question and a tough one to answer. You have to understand, here's how you do it. Map out your whole process from identifying a prospect all the way through to serving them, and map it out and answer yourself honestly, where are people getting stuck at, or where is the point where I can bring a lot in a lot comes to that point, but then the next step, it falls off a lot. Poor man's version of identifying your bottleneck, that would be it. And it's like, okay, what are the different ways I can make change at this area, and come up with those ways and start kind of making hypotheses or eliminating things or taking some educated guesses. This is more of a tactically, this is hard to explain because everybody's business is different. You have to understand the mindset. Go get the book, The Goal, or It's Not Luck. And when you're done reading that, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about.
You mentioned 2 books. The first one was It's Not Luck. What was the second one?
The Goal.
The Goal. Okay.
And it's all stuff based on what's called the theory of constraints. If you look that up, you'll find his name is Elihu Goldrath. I won't even try spelling his name. But he's out of Israel. I don't think he's alive anymore, but he's in the world of Edwards Deming and all these continuous improvement, process improvement people.
Okay, the theory of constraints, guys, in case you're looking,
Yep.
that's definitely an area to focus on. And, we've talked about success stories, we've talked about mistakes, we've talked about what we can do to grow our revenue and, actionable steps that we can take. Is there someone that you can't help?
I stay in my lane. So I typically, or not typically, I don't work with B2C clients, only because my experience and expertise is B2B. Could I try to do it? Yes. But I'd be doing a disservice to whoever I've been working with. So B2C and like e-commerce, companies like that are people that I can't really help. I don't have those distinctions. Retail businesses, I don't necessarily have those distinctions. A majority of what I do are service-based providers and consultants, experts, people selling a service B2B. That's really, who I help.
Well, in a way, that's you niching down as well.
Yeah. Typically it's to go even farther, it's people who learned a skill or generated an expertise in corporate America, decided for some reason to leave corporate America, whether they were displaced or just chose to. And now they're taking that expertise and serving small and medium-sized businesses. That's who I really love helping. Highly educated, super smart people who have a challenge going from entrepreneur to expert. So I help them make that shift in a seamless way so they can actually make the impact that they're looking for with their clients.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Bryan, we've had a couple of listeners listening in, and when they are listening to this podcast episode, are there a few things that, they might need to know to apply what they're listening in this podcast?
Like what things can they do?
Yeah, actionable steps, maybe.
Actionable steps. So if you're not on a journey to improve yourself, get on that journey right now. That will help you immensely. I have seen transformation after transformation of clients who decide to go on this personal growth journey. The second thing is learn how to identify problems and distinguish them between problems and symptoms. It's super powerful. These are things, and these two things I'm mentioning are things that not only help you professionally, but they also help you personally. And the last thing is to slow down to speed up. Like when you have the amount of clarity that allows you to take, when you have clarity, it gives you confidence. When you have confidence, it allows you to take effective action. And what I've noticed is when people run into challenges, they typically try to move faster through that challenge, and that fogs or dampens how you can look into what you need, how you need to do it, and how you need to approach it. So slow down, get some entrepreneur thinking time in. Don't work and just let yourself think so you can get that clarity. And I promise it'll give you confidence, and I promise that confidence will allow you to take effective action.
Wow, I absolutely loved it. So the first one that you did mention was, hop on the journey of self-improvement. That's definitely going to get you to where you need. Not just that, identify your problems, understand the difference between your problems and the symptoms. So dig deep, basically. And I absolutely loved when you said it the first time as well, but slow down to speed up, and gain some clarity. With that clarity, you gain the confidence. And with that confidence, take careful action. Now, don't hurry there as well. So that is amazing. And I love the concept of thinking time as well. I feel that in this rat race, we're always just running. And if we don't run, we feel guilty for, even taking the time to sit down and think. It's ridiculous. So I absolutely love the fact that you said, sometimes you need to slow down to get to where you need to be. And I think that basically wraps up this entire episode. I absolutely loved every minute of it, Bryan. I have made a lot of notes. I'm sure that my listeners have made notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on this show. Now, if someone were to, reach out to you, if they need help with their revenue growth, then how can they reach you? What's the best possible way?
Yeah, so there's a couple places. First place is our website, onPurposeGrowth.com. Second place is I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I'm very prevalent on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there. So my username is my last name, first name. So McDonald Bryan. So if you type linkedin.com/McDonald Bryan, you find me. And then I've also got a free Facebook community for entrepreneurs. It's called the onPurpose Growth Community. You'll be able to easily find it on Facebook if you're on Facebook. And, those are a couple of places where you can find us. And any of the social media platforms, my username is McDonald Bryan. So you can find me anywhere. You're going to find me best on LinkedIn, but I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all of those places.
Fantastic. Bryan, sorry, can you tell us a little bit about onPurpose Growth? Just a little synopsis about onPurpose Growth.
Yeah. So as you probably understand at this point, at some level, we work with entrepreneurs who are on the coaching side, who are experts that have developed some skill in corporate America, and now that they're selling into small and medium-sized businesses. And we're not a coaching program or a consulting program that's just going to teach you skills. We're going to teach you frameworks, philosophies, and strategies that you can take and apply now to grow your business. And then when we part ways, if I did my job right, you can take that same thinking and apply it in the future to change your business moving forward. At any level, when you reach a plateau, reapply the thinking and move forward. So we differentiate ourselves from our competition by helping people think in systems like I'm describing, helping people grow on a personal journey at the same time, and create a business that eventually doesn't need them. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, you probably know, where they're just growing a job. They don't have the freedom that they want. And with the foundations that we build in systems and foundations that allow them to be a business owner and not necessarily self-employed. And we love doing it. I mean, we worked with hundreds of businesses to do this. So I'm excited for your audience to hear this message, and excited if anybody reaches out.
Well, thank you so much, Bryan. I'm going to put all the links in the description box below. So if any of you are interested, definitely do reach out to Bryan on any of the platforms that he has mentioned. Hop on the Facebook community. I know for a fact that after this call, I'm definitely going to be in that group as well. Thank you so much, Bryan, for hopping on this call. We have learned so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. This is awesome. It was fun too for me.
Well, thank you. All right, guys, that brings me to the end of this podcast episode. I'll catch you guys in my next podcast episode. Bye-bye.